Welcome to the Education Innovators Podcast. I'm Eric Byron, and it is my privilege to host this show where I get to talk to folks from all over the world who are education thought leaders and innovators. We'll hear inspiring stories from educators, EdTech founders, AI experts, and others who are fearlessly innovating and delivering unique learning experiences. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started.
Our success as a district comes down to our quality people that are in the district. We have to have quality educators, quality leadership, quality buildings and ground supervisors and technology supervisors, and quality secretaries. So I think it comes down to all of those elements. It's the people side of it. It's not the work in the end. It's the relationships with the people.
Dr. Laura Jacobs takes us through a 3-year journey with her Moonshot program, where they don't issue grades and they have no grade levels. With a PhD in educational technology and 5 years experience as a school superintendent, Dr. Jacobs' passion for innovation in education translates into action and practical solutions. And it's not just about technology, it's about people. Keep listening. Welcome to the Education Innovators Podcast. I'm Eric Byron, and today I am joined by Laura Jacob. She is the superintendent of the California Area School District and founder and CEO of California Academy of Learning Charter School. Now, Laura leads several programs, including a bee club where the students care for beehives, and a 3D violin club. I thought this was very interesting, where students print violins on 3D printers and then learn how to play them. And she also hosts a girls' leadership tea where the girls learn about leadership. So California Area School District has also been honored. It's recognized by the AASA as one of the only 6 school districts across the country as a Learning 2025 Lighthouse Demonstration System. And the U.S. Department of Education awarded California Area with the 2022 District Sustainability Award, the only school district in the state of Pennsylvania to earn that distinction. And I do want to point out, even though it's called the California Area School District, it is not in California, thank God, at the moment with what's going on out there with fires. So, and our hearts go out to them for, everything that's going on in California. We hope that gets resolved quickly. But you're in Pennsylvania, and you just mentioned there's snow on the ground. Well, thank you for joining me from Pennsylvania. I am curious why it's called California Area Schools.
Absolutely, Eric. Yeah, it's a really good story. So during the gold rush, everyone was heading obviously west, trying to find their bit of fortune. And when people would ask, where is California? This local town said, oh, it's right here. You wanna put your feet right here. So it was a way for them to grow the town and grow their businesses. And that's where it started to flourish. So way back in the gold rush.
Oh, that's funny. A little sleight of hand there, deception.
Correct.
Confuse people. Well, it confused me for a while too. So yes, I thought you were in California. But anyway, so before we get too deep into this, what first attracted me, and I read an article about the school, and it was talking about competency-based learning. And so before we go too far in and we start talking about Moonshot, let's make sure we're all on the same page in terms of what we mean by competency-based learning. So in your words, what does that mean? What is competency-based learning?
So for us, what we're doing is we're utilizing the state standards as being our standard for students to demonstrate their learning, and using a variety of means for kids to demonstrate that learning when it comes to their ability to meet that set of state standards. And I apologize, we do have our morning announcements here going on, so I'll mute myself just briefly as you talk. How's that, Eric?
Oh, okay. I actually hadn't picked it up on my side yet, but that's okay. I understand that happened. So competency based. So you're still using the state standards in terms of assessment criteria, I gather, but it's the delivery of the content that's altered. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, I would say both the delivery of the content is adjusted to the individual student, and I know we'll dive into that deeper here, but also the assessment of how we're assessing student learning with the tools that we have at our disposal today. It can be a plethora of ways. So when you look at, for example, a simple state standard, when I talk to my teachers, no one says you must read Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, and that's not in the state standards, but yet we choose Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet to align it to the variety of themes and literature concepts that are needed for the kids to demonstrate their understanding. I'm a previous English teacher, so I'm a big fan of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, but at the same time, we have to truly dive in and look at what is that standard asking of our students and ensuring that we're assessing to that standard. But the standards really do allow us breadth and depth towards looking at student achievement and student knowledge of those standards.
Yeah. So give me an example here for Romeo and Juliet, right? How does that apply to a competency that you would be measuring?
So you could look at under poetry, you can look at alliteration, similes, metaphors, and figurative language. So where that standard might say that the student is knowledgeable of figurative language and is able to identify and demonstrate the use of figurative language, we can use Romeo and Juliet to obviously introduce it, teach it, and then have the students replicate that. And so that's where we look at how broad that standard is in order to dive deep into, and we'll talk later about students' interests so that we can really tie it together with what they're interested in.
Right. So again, I'm still, and I'm not challenging, I'm trying to understand exactly what's
Sure.
different there in that delivery. So when you're going to do a section on Romeo and Juliet, how's the delivery different than a traditional school where they just, I guess you read it and then you test them on their knowledge? Is that basically it?
No, so where I push back is with my educators is the fact that, and I'm using Romeo and Juliet as a means. So typically, traditionally, every kid gets Romeo and Juliet. Every kid reads that piece, and then every kid then takes, for example, an exam or a written exam on their knowledge of those concepts. Where we are pushing back at California areas, we're saying that we have a breadth of literature opportunities for kids. Why not tie that standard of, say, figurative language towards a piece of literature or a series of literature that a child is interested in? So if I have a child that's interested in particular literature, we can then engage them so much more by providing a variety of different literature pieces for them to engage together. I view, and Romeo and Juliet can still be an option. However, I view it as use the resources that we have available and the ability to teach so many different pieces of literature to kids, as well as ensuring that we're providing an equity of voice today and that we're being very mindful of ensuring that we have multiple representations of our kids in the literature as well. And then when it comes to the assessment side, not all kids have to write the assessment in order to prove their knowledge of it. Some can present, some can complete an artwork, some can develop a play. There are so many different areas that kids can take their interests and their strengths and showcase to us that they know that standard, they know figurative language, but we have to allow the kids to demonstrate it in a means that is their strength.
Oh, I love that. So that's the gold for me is that ability to say, yes, everybody doesn't have to conform to a particular assessment, that they can demonstrate competency in a way that makes sense for them, but still demonstrates it. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
a great example would be your podcast. A student could very easily do an example podcast of say them, pretending as though they're interviewing William Shakespeare or pretending as though they're interviewing Elon Musk. And so, but they
Yep.
can still through that podcast demonstrate to us that they truly understand the concept that we were teaching them in the classroom.
Yeah. No, that's great. And there are lots of tools out there now. I know Khan Academy's Conmigo, you can have a conversation with Shakespeare in there. I don't know that they have Elon Musk, but they do have a bunch of, well, literary figures and actual historical figures um, that you can
Yes.
interview. Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think you highlight with AI now, the abilities are endless. Utilizing AI as a tool for educators to say, hey, I have a kid that's very social and excellent with their verbal presentation skills. I have another child that's really interested in mathematics. Help me take this term and tie it to both of their interests. And AI can give us so many different ideas. And so we've really grasped onto that tool as a way for us to meet kids individually and where they are.
yeah. Well, glad to hear that you embraced that. I actually did a podcast episode specifically on that topic of these simulated, conversations you can have, because there are a bunch of educators who are just like, no, 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 this is, you know, awful that you can't possibly expect AI to do this well. And so I tested it and I actually found that it was very interesting. And I think I did what I do. I did, I think Marie Curie, oh, Da Vinci. That was interesting because I actually challenged him. I didn't like one of the answers. And, I did some research and came back and said, oh, that doesn't sound right. And it defended its thing. But one of the things I really liked about the way Khan Academy did it was it's very Socratic in terms of
Yes.
it doesn't just answer a question. It always comes back with another question and kind of, this is kind of how I saw it in my time, in my context, but how do you see it in your context, right? And so
Yes.
it would, lights just go up there.
Yes, they did. I apologize. We have automated lighting to save money, so
Yeah, so you're not
I
moving
apologize
around
about that.
enough.
Correct, right. Right. But no, I agree with you. Khan Academy is being very purposeful and ensuring that algorithm is educational. And
Yeah,
I appreciate and value that Socratic element that's in there. And you can tell that they were being very purposeful in that design.
yeah, yeah. I even had some questions for Eeyore, which I thought was kind of funny that they had Eeyore in there. And anyway, if you get a chance, you should watch that episode
Okay,
on
right.
Khan
That's great.
Academy.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, let's get to my questions here. So, all right, well, let's get to Moonshot. First of all, I want to know, why is it called Moonshot?
Sure. So this was a grant right after the pandemic from our local philanthropy, the Benedum Foundation. They provided a grant opportunity and they said, okay, now that we've been out of the pandemic, we really want you to shoot for the moon and reimagine what school could be. And they really encouraged us to think completely outside the box and with the confidence that if it failed, you're not going to be punished as it relates to funding, for example. So it was one of the first, really the only grant opportunity I've had up to this point where even if my outcome was a failure, it was still celebrated as a learning and valued in the aspect of pushing things forward as it relates to education. So it was a $70,000 grant and we applied for it and we were awarded very thankfully. And our proposal was that we want to eliminate grades and eliminate grade levels and create an individualized learning plan for every single student. So we wanted to take all of the great things that happen during an IEP process, so an individualized education plan as it relates under the special education law, take all of those great processes and procedures that are in place, and they're in place for a reason because they are effective. Take that and apply it to all children, and I even argue all adults as well. Even my professional educators, I want to have an individualized learning plan for all of them. So take that and apply that to all children. Give the children and the families an opportunity to experience not having any grades or being in a grade level, because we know it was very much so in the post-pandemic, but I argue it was prior to the pandemic. We know that kids are at different levels as it relates to, say, mathematics or English or science or social studies. I might have a kid that's really strong in science and they're at a fourth or fifth grade level, but maybe their mathematics is still at a third grade level and their English is at a fifth grade level. That's fine. And that's how all of us are. And when we look at Todd Rose's, the end of average, what we're doing is we're just placing kids in a grade based upon their age, but yet they might excel and need a little bit more support in different grade levels. And so what we said is, we're going to reach you where you are. And if you're at a fifth grade mathematics level, then guess what? We're going to work on those fifth grade mathematics standards. If you're still at a third grade level, when it comes to English language arts, that's fine. We're going to reach you there and we're going to work at the third grade ELA standards. And we took away the aspect of whatever your age was. And so this was entirely a voluntary process. We started off with a small group of kids, about 25 to 30 kids, and we've already expanded to the point that we've needed a second teacher. And now we have it K through 12 as being a moonshot opportunity for kids.
Wow. So much to process there.
Right.
Well, first of all, let's talk about the money and this unconditional thing. I love this, that they came in and said failure's okay as long as we're learning something. And so we don't see that in education very often.
Right.
That I did another episode called Experimenting on Children that, you know, it's like, yeah, that unfortunately, or, however you want to look at it. But yes, I came to the conclusion that the only way we advance, right, the only way we innovate and improve is by experimenting a bit. Right. We have to try things. And the same thing we would encourage students to do is to go try and be willing to fail. We need to be able to do that in our education systems as well. Within boundaries, there have to be, guardrails there so we don't damage these
Absolutely.
kids. But, which brings me to kind of the next question. How did they measure success? What was their
Sure.
criteria to say, you'd spent our $70,000 well?
Sure. So we chose to hire a moonshot learning coach. And that's what that $70,000 went towards, was taking one of our educators who is an absolute rock star, Heather Nicholson. And what she did is that is still her full-time job. So her job is to work with all of the students that are in the elementary moonshot program. And some kids might traditionally still go to, say, an ELA class or a math class, or the kids might spend most of their academic time with her. And so we individualize every single schedule. So some of the kids said, well, yeah, I'd like to work with you for ELA and math, but I really still want to make sure that I go to gym class with my peers. And that's fine. So we individualize every single schedule. When it comes to the accountability side, on with working with parents, I said, listen, one of the things that I want to ensure is that we still complete the state standardized assessments for your child. That is mandatory, because I want to ensure that, yes, I'm not messing with your kid and that this is actually helping them and advancing them. And so all of the parents agreed that they will still at the end of the year take our state standardized assessments. All of them did for the last 3 consecutive years. And we've continued to prove that our students that are in the Moonshot program, and granted, it's a small sample size because I only have 1,000 kids in my school district, and we have just over 100 that are in the Moonshot program K through 12. So I recognize it's a very small sample size. However, they continue to outperform our averages when it comes to district level students, regardless of academic, socioeconomic status, et cetera. When it comes to the accountability on the side of the Grable grant, we had a series of questions that we had to respond to. We've also shared out and met with other schools and talked about the Moonshot program and what we're trying to do. So they've been very supportive, not only during the grant, but also now that the grant is over, they've been very supportive in helping us continue to push that forward. And looking at it, for example, differently when it comes to the high school. It's a very different animal than elementary when you look at education. So it's really been an ongoing relationship, honestly, with the Grable Foundation.
Awesome. Yeah, it's encouraging. This is the kind of stuff I've
It
been
is.
looking for in this podcast is folks who are really willing to try, right? Anyway, I've been a huge advocate for, I call it getting rid of the time box, right? So the
Yes.
grades is basically, it's a time box. It's saying, oh, you're 7 years old, therefore you must go through this curriculum at this speed with everybody else. And at the end of this year, you either go forward or you don't, right? But it's so
Right.
time boxed. And I've always said, well, this makes no sense to me that, you can try and put every kid into a time box like that because we're all individual. And, my own experience growing up many years ago, it didn't fit me very well. And I was not
Exactly.
a great student. Later, I excelled when it was my choosing, right? When I
Yes.
decided what I wanted to study and how I wanted to study and when I wanted to study, then it made sense and I excelled. But ended up with
And
four
I think
college degrees. Yeah.
you're hitting the big point is that aspect of choice. So often in education, we eliminate that choice element for children, and we don't have to, but we can tie whatever interest kids have, we can tie those to all of the standards. It is very easy. If a kid's interested in spiders, a particular NFL team, or if they're interested in, say, ancient Rome, we can tie those standards together with writing, with history, with mathematics. All of those elements can be included in there. And I think you really hit it in highlighting choice for children. When we have that choice element, we're going to be so much more engaged in our own learning, as opposed to being told, you will do this, this is what you're going to turn in, and this is how you're going to be assessed.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it makes so much sense. I just wish more schools were doing what you're doing, and hopefully what you are doing and getting word out about it is going to help encourage some others to continue to experiment. Now it's operating as like a charter school within the district. Is that right?
No, so we have two entities here. So we have the district Moonshot program, and the students and their families, they choose to either be part of that or not part of it. And they obviously don't receive grades. We have a transcript, so it's a digital portfolio to demonstrate student learning. We use Mastery Transcript for that documentation because it does tie with the universities, and many of the universities accept a Mastery Transcript. And we had our first student, for example, last year go to the college of her choice, because that's always the question. My kid won't be able to get
Yeah.
into college without grades. We had our first student that was in the Moonshot program. She graduated and went to the college of her choice last year. And the reason she chose Moonshot was very unique. It was right after the pandemic. So she was really struggling with anxiety. And she's a very bright girl, and she really struggled with turning in assignments because she was so worried about getting certain questions wrong. And so she would literally not turn in her assignments just because she was worried about certain ones that would be wrong. And that caused her to get a quote unquote failing grade. So she elected
So the
Moonshot, and
fear of
just by
failure made her fail.
Yes, exactly. And so
Yeah.
it was such a simple change, though. We just said, then let's eliminate the grades, and you demonstrate to us at your pace that you know this content. And guess what? She excelled. That's all it took. That was
Yeah.
the only thing we had to do to allow her to excel. She still graduated at the same pace as her age-based peers. She still went to the college of her choice. She's doing great. And all we had to do was eliminate the grades and just give her some breathing space. And that was it. And she did a tremendous job. So yes, we have that under the traditional school district model. So it's we call it, a one room schoolhouse within the school district. That's an option. At the same time, because we didn't know that we were going to be awarded that grant opportunity, we started a charter school concept here, where the charter school is approved as a charter for a no grades, no grade level individualized learning plan approach. So my thought was, hey, I'm going to go at both of these angles, and one's
Yeah.
going to work out, and I'm going to be able to try and see if one will work out. And so, so we have it at both sides. So you have a small rural school district can pull it off, and a small charter school is also able to pull it off, and parents continue to select this as an option.
Yeah. And are both successful?
Yes, I argue that yes, indeed, both are successful. We have more and more people, kids and families, that are selecting to do Moonshot or selecting to go to the charter. I'm not saying that it's for everyone, and that's fine. And I think that was a key part of this, is that it was an option. I'm not
Right.
saying that everyone must do this, and that's where I think we have to continue to reflect as educators. Just like all kids must take the same test, all kids must do the same reading, is an all in one encompassing element. I think as educational leaders, we need to start thinking about the diversity and breadth of opportunities that we give to kids. So we have Moonshot, we have a traditional learning experience, we have summer as an option for kids. We also have a purely online option for kids. And I think as educational leaders, like you highlight about choice, we have to start giving kids that element of choice. And our kids will either select all one, they might select all traditional or all Moonshot. But many of our kids are saying, I'll take one or two classes over the summer. I'll do a few online, but then I'll do a few that are traditional face to face. Like I still want biology face to face, and I still want my English class face to face. And that's fine. And we're developing schedules that meet kids with that, because I think as educators, our kids know pretty darn well how best they learn, and they know how they will do well. And so we have to meet them when it comes to a diversity of educational experiences.
Let's take a quick commercial break. I just want to take a second and plug the Human Intelligence Movement. Now, this is not a paid advertisement. I'm a member and I support what they're trying to do. The mission of the Human Intelligence Movement is to ensure that all students have the skills to thrive and survive and succeed in an AI world. So join the movement. There's a link in the show notes. All right, back to our discussion with Dr. Laura Jacob. Yeah, I'm curious if the system allows to plug in kind of other external sources. So like I know, well, I lived in Florida for a bunch of years and they had the Florida virtual schools. So as my
Yes,
kids were coming up, this was an option. And at the time, it was kind of a really interesting option because if you were at a high school that didn't offer particular courses, you could go look for them in the virtual school and still get credit. So you could take courses that weren't available, in your school. And so part of what I'm thinking is you've got this kind of, you called it the one room schoolhouse. But you have one rock star teacher, and as good as she may be, she can't be an expert in everything,
correct,
right?
right.
So how are you kind of extending those opportunities and then kind of making sure that they happen, that the
Yes,
assessments
exactly.
correlate and get into their transcript or whatever.
Right. And so that's where I think the portfolio is critical. So the mastery transcript portfolio does really help with that. But yeah, you're exactly right. Being able to take a student, so we have a student, for example, that's very passionate about ballet, for example. And instead of her doing the traditional PE curriculum, she is demonstrating her knowledge and her PE abilities through ballet. So that, yeah, my teacher, she isn't a ballet expert, nor is my PE teacher. However, we can still look at that standard and say, is she able to demonstrate this? And she can, demonstrate, for example, the elements of flexibility, certain strength experiences, health and wellness, nutrition. So she can still demonstrate those standards when it comes to PE as well as health, but she's taking her focus completely on ballet. And we do utilize AI for assistance in that. We absolutely use that to align with the standards. So yes, we can really customize it that way within the classroom, but it does allow us. We have a student that was really interested in Mandarin, for example, and allow them to really focus on those passions while also still plugging in the standards that they have to achieve.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you hit on so many really good aspects of this. And again, the flexibility to learn what we want to learn, how we want to learn it. To me, it makes such a huge difference in terms of engagement. So one of the things that I know a lot of schools are struggling with are, truancy, particularly after COVID. Kids are just not showing up. Parents are struggling trying to figure out how to get their kids to go there. They're unhappy. There's all the social aspects, social emotional learning, we're seeing much more attention put on. How are your kids reacting that way in terms of kind of a holistic view of the student and you know, uh, their health,
Sure.
right? Mental,
Yeah,
emotional health.
exactly. Yeah, it's a tremendous challenge. And our students that are in Moonshot, their attendance is very high. So that's showing us that element of engagement. But then again, also they have that choice, like we continue to talk about. So they have that choice to be central to their learning plan. And we have, instead of getting a report card, we meet together, as a team, the parent, the child, and the teacher, to talk about how are they progressing and what do we need to do next. So it's a very different approach than, the traditional report card
Right.
that I have to show to dad, and have him sign. So yeah, and I think in a broader picture, as an educator, when we look at, for example, at the secondary district wide, we've eliminated the use of cell phones during the school day, and that's after doing a book study with parents and guardians in order to ensure students' mental health is first and foremost. They can still bring their phones or in their backpacks or in their lockers or in the back of their pocket, but at least they're focusing more on school. And we're also pivoting to include more social experiences. For example, we have monthly, we call them social excursions. So encouraging the kids to get out and socialize together as opposed to being on the cell phone. And we tie those together with academics. Your attendance has to be good in school, and you have to be passing all of your classes just like as if you were a student athlete. And if you are, then we go on various field trips. So for example, this evening we're going skiing at the local ski resort, and the district is covering that in order to encourage kids to get outside, to socialize together, but also focus on what you need to do as far as traditional to get your schoolwork done and keep your attendance up so that you can have these positive experiences. And again, I think it all ties to engagement. Our kids that don't come to school are not engaged with school. And so we have to find creative ways to engage them in school. And it might be the career and technical center is the one driver that keeps them coming to school. It might be, very often it's that coach. God bless those our coaches out there that keep kids coming to school to keep them engaged. So it's not one size fits all, but we're trying a variety of different strategies in order to engage kids back in the school.
Yeah. No, that's good. Well, I love the skiing thing. Although, my own personal experience with trying to take kids skiing, what we learned was that take them to a hill with some sleds, and it's cheaper and they had way more fun
Yes,
than
you are
trying
right
to
about that.
coordinate all the equipment and the lift tickets and all of that was, so expensive. And then
Correct.
I asked somebody we were visiting up in Vermont, and
Oh,
we asked
wow.
one of the locals in a shop. I said, "Where do the kids go sledding?" And he said, "Oh, behind the school over here, there's a nice little hill." I said, "Where can I find some sleds?" And he pointed me to a place where I could borrow some, just the saucers, whatever. We took the kids up there, had a blast. They
Yes.
just
Yes.
absolutely loved that. And I said, "Oh, well, that was way easier than taking them up on the mountain, to the ski
Correct.
resort." So
Yeah, I
anyway,
agree with you. We're high. We have a high poverty rate here, and so all of our kids receive a free lunch and a free breakfast. And I think we look at it as the kids might not have this opportunity, traditionally,
oh
and
yeah,
so that's why, yeah, we're really trying to push it. But yeah, we've already been sled riding outside the school. The school cafeteria trays are also an excellent
yes,
sled if you ever need an emergency sled. So just
there
from
you
my high
go.
school experience, yeah.
Yes, yes. That's funny. I remember that from a kid. I grew up in Massachusetts, yes, and I do
Yeah.
remember that. Yes, using the trays from the cafeteria uh,
Yes.
on a hill. Yeah. Oh, so much fun. So tell me a story, if you can, without you know breaking any privacy or concerns or whatever. But you know, who's been a really good example? A kid, maybe, if you've got a story of somebody like the other one with the fear of failure thing. Is there another case that, you look at and just go,
Sure.
this is just a great example of why this works?
Yeah, I think our graduate is a great example, and we're really proud of her. Another good example is we had a student in the elementary really passionate about fashion and design, and with that was really engaged in creating costumes or clothing and different things. And with that, Mrs. Nicholson really came up with a variety of different activities for him to talk about the history of fashion and design, to look at the art components, to look at the mathematics, the geometry on fashion and design. And then she tied all of it really well together. And he really thrived with that. And it wouldn't have been an opportunity that, say, a traditional classroom teacher would have that time to develop that through line for him as far as instruction. And I think, in watching that experience for him, I really appreciated the time and an effort that Mrs. Nicholson put towards designing that instruction that way. And so it's again, the ballet example is another great example. Her passion for ballet and Mrs. Nicholson's ability to say, okay, this is again utilizing AI, utilizing Google and all the resources that we have available, but utilizing those to give us ideas on how can we tie the history together, how can we tie the mathematics and the PE standards all together for that instruction. So I think that those are great examples of projects that we've seen come out with the kids doing demonstrations of their learning that I wouldn't have seen in a more traditional classroom.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you describe some of that as project-based learning?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I look at the kids, because we ask them in that pre-survey when they say they want to be part of Moonshot, we ask them, how do you best demonstrate what you know? And we know that people do it in a variety of contexts. We also know as professionals and as adults, we have to be able to write well, to speak well, to present well. So there are different elements there that we have to develop those skills for children. And so we take whatever their skill set is and tie that together. So the kids do talk about, like, well, how are you going to demonstrate to Mrs. Nicholson or to another teacher that you know this concept?
Yeah. No, that's great. I had another guest on the show who, Phil Alcock, he created I guess its own business called AI X, project-based learning. So
Okay.
right. So what he found, right, he was a huge proponent of project-based learning, but then, when AI came on the scene, he realized that, AI could really help with that kind of thing, right? Of saying, oh, I got
Yes.
this kid who wants to do fashion, but I need to tie it to the curriculum and, the state standards, and then using AI to help, kind of map and just enhance your creativity in the kinds of projects and ideas you can come up with and ways to demonstrate it. How much do you let the students use AI in
We
their
do.
work?
Yeah, we absolutely encourage them to use it. We don't want to have them not know how to use it because we feel that that would be a disadvantage to them in their future. So we do absolutely encourage them to use it. We teach those skills, those strategies. We use Dan Fitzpatrick's model of the prep model in
Yep.
order to put in the prompt. So we do encourage that. And when it came out, we talked about, as an English team, for example, what are the parameters that we want to set? Are there certain components that we will say, this is not, we're not going to use AI for this, but you can use it at this point in time. So we set those parameters. We're being very responsible with it, with the kids, and teaching them that there is responsible use, but there's also ways that you can use it incorrectly, just like when Google came out, right? Just like
Yep.
when the digital calculator came out. So
Yep.
all these innovations, we continue to see that central theme. People are always worried about cheating. However, if we teach kids responsible use, I genuinely feel that teaching them the responsible use, that they'll be more likely to be responsible in the future. And so we trust them with that.
Yeah. Well, to me, it all comes back to motivation, right? If I want to
Yes,
cheat, I'm going to find a way to cheat, right? Whether it's
right.
AI or some other way, I'm going to, find a way to cheat. But if I want to learn, I'm going to find a way to learn. And if AI
Yes.
helps me learn, then beautiful. Then that's the right use of AI. And so, well, I'm glad you're embracing that. I am curious how you went about, and your teacher, Miss Nichols, went about kind of getting up to speed on AI and its potential uses. Was there some training you went to, or like
Um,
so many, did you just kind of figure it out on your own?
right. Yeah, I'm a strong proponent of just utilizing a lot of tools around me and playing with it until I figure it out,
Okay.
but we've been very beneficial in having opportunities to attend various conferences, all around. And anytime an AI session would come up, I would definitely take it on. Dan Fitzpatrick, I heard him speak. He's tremendous. I read his book, and then, watch a variety of YouTube videos, podcasts as well, that help you stay on top of just educational technology in general. My doctorate is in educational technology, so I do embrace it. And the next thing to come out, I'm excited to give it a try and see how it can tie in education.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, you reminded me of another question I had written here. Let me,
Sure.
so yeah, you studied from your the bio you gave me, which I didn't read all of it, by the way, but it'll be in the show notes. You studied advanced educational leadership at Harvard. I am curious what you learned from that that you were able to apply to the school district and your role there, superintendent, but also to the Moonshot program.
Yes, absolutely. So Harvard University has a certificate in advanced educational leadership program. It is entirely online, which is tremendous, but it allows me as a postdoctorate individual to continue to push my learning and to continue to push it further. And it is a cohort model, so you're tied with people from all around the world, and they walk you through a variety of leadership scenarios to push your thinking forward and also push education forward. And so in working through those modules, it allows me to think of, what I'll use Ted Dintersmith's example of what school could be, and utilizing the leadership that we have in our positions to make the changes that we can within our sphere of influence. And so through that program, after I got my doctorate, I still want to continue to be a student. I'm a lifelong student. That's my favorite job, is constantly learning. And so the Kale program at Harvard allowed me to do that, connect with others from around the world and learn new ideas. And so part of it was looking at ungrading and ungrading practices, and how do you do that in a school setting.
Awesome. So kind of some inspiration and maybe some practical handles there to get you
Absolutely.
you started. Yeah. No, that's great. By the way, there's another one of my most notable guests on the show is Nolan Bushnell, who, he and Dr. Leah Haynes wrote a book on shaping the future of education, the
Yes.
Exodexa Manifesto. And but one of his quotes in there is, no grades, no grades. Right. He's a big proponent of that, kind of model as well. I've also looked at Montessori, right? So
Yes.
Montessori system is kind of like that too, right? There's no grade
Yes.
levels in Montessori. You progress at, whatever your natural progression is, and very flexible. Students kind of decide what they want to work on, when they want to work on it within a framework. So there's definitely guardrails to, kind of keep them in line. So there's multiple models out there, and I
Right.
think this stuff
Yeah,
is
this isn't
starting.
anything new. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. We're not reinventing the wheel. It's just we're taking what we've learned and made it fit to our school context and with our population.
Yeah. So, well, one of the things, well, again, that interests me also is accessibility to these programs, because this has been part of the challenge, right? So, like Montessori are basically private schools, right?
Yes.
Most kids can't afford to go to a Montessori school. Even the parents wanted to do this. And so I love the fact that what you're doing, actually, the students in your program are not advantaged kids, right?
Correct.
These are kids who wouldn't normally be able to attend even an exodexa that, Nolan and Leah are trying to do. At least for now, these will be, probably private charter schools, and we'll see how well they do. Theirs is extremely game based. That's
Okay, great.
their focus, right? Nolan is the founder of Atari and the father of video games, as they call him. Yes, his system is all designed around, which is a whole another interesting, aspect of this. I'm curious, do
Correct.
you have any gamified, game-based learning
We do
integrated?
have a and we do have an esports team, but that's about it as far as, yeah, we don't
Okay.
have as much gamified learning for us. I do appreciate that you talk about the context and not making it just for the privileged few. We've been very purposeful in that in working with Mrs. Nicholson at the beginning. I said, I don't want this to just be a glorified gifted program. This isn't just for, our high academic students, because the ones that aren't engaged are students that might struggle a little bit more in various contexts. And so she's done a very good job, and we've been very purposeful when we look at the list of kids that we invite and want to have part of Moonshot. I said it has to be representative at minimum to what our general school population is when it comes to socioeconomic status, race, gender, ethnicity, etc. And so, but I think you have to design it that way. You have to ensure that you're constantly looping back to those core beliefs that you have when it comes to making sure that we represent all kids.
Yeah. Well, and you're 3 years in now, right?
I'm just about to hit 5 years. This is my fourth year. I started in July 1st of 2020, and I'm still a superintendent, so that's great. But the 2020 was my first experience as being a superintendent.
Oh, okay. So, but Moonshot is 3 years. Is that right?
Yes,
Have you
exactly.
completed 3 years?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So that's long enough to me, right? That I always say kind of your first attempt at something, is just you should assume it's broken, right? And
Right.
we're going to have to fix a lot of stuff. And then you iterate timing and there's all kinds of things anytime you're introducing new curriculum, right? How much content should I have? How hard should it be? There's all kinds of things. You just kind of throw it out there in the first iteration, and then, you begin to improve on it. So, but by the third iteration, it's probably getting not locked in, but you're feeling a lot more confident about it.
Yes.
What
Yes,
kind
we
of
are.
changes have you made since the first year to where the program is now?
Yeah, that's a great question. It at the elementary, it's gotten much better, and I we're much more locked in, I think, at the elementary, where our biggest challenge is the secondary. The All of a sudden the parents are good with no grades until bam, they hit high school and they say, I want grades.
Yeah.
And so that has been a challenge. And so for example, we used to have it where it was all or none. Either you're all in when it comes to Moonshot, or you're not, you're going traditional. And I've gotten more flexible in, especially at the secondary, because that's where it's desired. Of if the kids want grades for certain classes, we're allowing that. I understand the bigger picture when it comes to universities and GPAs and those pieces, even though I might disagree, but I'm not going to fight that system
Good.
there. I'm going to change what I can here. So that's a good example of a change. We added middle school, then we added high school into it. So a lot of our work right now has been at the high school level, and also encouraging and working with our teachers on how do you give effective feedback. I view the professional learning is a through line that we're constantly evolving and constantly developing, because you know no grades is one thing, that's fine, but we still have to ensure that we're giving quality feedback to our students so that they can improve. Just saying good job or great or no, that's not right isn't quality feedback. And so we're really working a lot with the educators when it comes to professional learning on giving quality feedback to kids, because the kids in Moonshot, for example, if I'm in an Algebra 1 class, I could have 10 kids that don't get grades, they're in Moonshot. I could have 10 kids that are traditional, and I'm the teacher. And so some of the kids I'm grading and some of the kids I'm just giving feedback to. And so we have to educate our teachers on what does quality feedback look like. And yeah, you might not be putting a grade in, but you are putting a little bit more time in when it comes to giving that good feedback. So that, I think, is something that we're constantly working on and evolving and adjusting as we go through.
Yeah. So I know there's a lot more talk, you know, human intelligence and, kind of soft skills. Well, even I'm drawing a blank now, the organization that did, but the future job skills and stuff, right? And trying to measure things like creativity, you know, critical thinking skills, problem solving, you know, analytical thinking, right? These are things that traditionally we don't put a grade on them, right? And
Right,
so systems not really designed to assess these things. I love the idea of assessing curiosity, right?
right,
As
right.
an employer in the tech industry, right? What did I want? I wanted people who, you know,
Yep.
want to, a challenge. They want to go figure something out, right? This is, they're curious. How does this work? Let me take it apart and put it back together again just to see, how it works. But how do you measure that, right? So I'm
Correct.
curious if any of that side of it, as you're trying to figure out how you give feedback, are you looking at some of those other kinds of characteristics that we want to develop in kids?
Yes, yeah, we're absolutely looking at those, 4 or 5 C's in there. We're focusing less on how do you measure it because obviously it's a challenge and we want to focus less on the measurement and more on the encouragement element. But you're exactly right. I could have an educator come in and interview with me and they might be a 4.0 student and have this tremendous QPA. But you know what? In the end, I just want to know that you love kids and you want to do the best that you can to get them, where they want to be. So that interview might be, a little bit different than say a traditional experience, just because I want to know that you care for kids. And so it is a challenge when we look at how do you encourage curiosity, encourage creativity without just that focus of the measurement component. But yeah, we are struggling with that and working through that. But where I think it is going well is the assessment side, allowing kids to have that element of choice or pushing them towards another experience to assess their learning. So it's the kids in Moonshot very rarely do a paper pencil test. It's many times, the project based like we talked about.
Right, right. Cool. How much would you say the success of the program is determined by the quality of the teacher versus just the format?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I think overall, even if I look at it as a district, our success as a district comes down to our quality people that are in the district. We have to have quality educators, quality leadership, quality buildings and ground supervisors and technology supervisors, and quality secretaries. So I think it comes down to all of those elements. It's the people side of it. It's not the work in the end, it's the relationships with the people. Is Mrs. Nicholson one of my best educators? Absolutely, without a doubt. She is an absolute rock star, and so she's taken it even further than I've imagined. But I think overall, any organization, we're only as good as our weakest link. So I think all of us, we want to continue to push everybody forward because that's what's going to make our organization better.
Yeah, no, I emphasize this all the time too, that I'm a tech guy. I'm all about technology, but I always say in the end, it's really about people.
Yep,
The tech isn't gonna win here. AI isn't gonna tip the scales unless we have the right people, humans in the room, that human-centered learning, AI and the technology, helps, but it's really about the people. So
absolutely.
what's the future now? Where do you go next with this?
So we have Moonshot started. We have a outdoor science school that we're trying to develop. So we developed it for 2 grade levels. So it's an entirely off the grid, uh so completely, like, say, solar powered, off the grid, outdoor science experience. So completely outdoors, so the kids experience science as I think it was intended to be. So I think we've gotten away from, this is another soapbox for me, we've gotten away from kids getting their hands dirty, smelling things, feeling things, tasting things that encourages science. I was a girl that I grew up on a farm, so I learned my biology from that farm, farm
Yeah,
life. So I want to get kids back to getting their hands dirty when it comes to science. So we started an elementary program. We're working on a biology curriculum, but an entirely off the grid summer, excuse me, outdoor science school. And we call it OSS, just a play on out of school suspension, just to play with words. But
Okay.
many of our kids are engaging in that. So, getting them outside and engaging both with the environment and science in a different way. And as you know from the bees as well, I'm a strong proponent for environmental education. So yeah, we're continuing to push and find different things to engage kids and think differently about how school can be. And I always tell my educators I'm open for any crazy ideas, because I think that, even if it's one kid that we engage, it's worth it.
Yeah. Well, that sounds great. I'm so glad that I got you on the show to share some of
Thank
this
you so
stuff
much.
because you are doing so many of the things that we've talked about on the show and different components and elements of it. And I love to see that it's being demonstrated and it's working and it's 3 years in, so you've had enough time to kind of play with it a little bit. So
Yes.
we're almost out of time here, but is there anything else you wanted to share that I haven't asked you about?
No, no, I thank you so much for the opportunity. Thanks for reaching out to us. We are a small school, but we're demonstrating that it can happen. So there's no doubt in my mind that other schools can replicate similar models and make it work for them. So I appreciate you showcasing all of the different authors and professionals that you have, because that's how we learn, is we learn through each other. So thank you for your work as well.
Well, thank you. It's my great pleasure to talk to folks like you who are doing it, right? This is well,
Right.
that's the thing is, you know, we don't fix education or improve it by talking about it. We got to
Yeah.
roll up our sleeves and say, get your hands dirty. I love that. That's another thing I talk a bit about is using all your senses. That
Yes.
again, AI has no experiences. It doesn't know what a rose smells like, or I use the example of jumping in the ocean. Kids need to get
Yes.
out from behind a device and go, yes, play with the bees,
Right. Exactly.
maybe get stung, but carefully.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yes. So yeah, no, it's all part of living. We gotta
Right.
live,
And
and
being human. Right. Yeah.
yes, and continuous learning. I praise you too for continuing to go back and get more. I'm in my mid 60s now, and I am still learning new stuff every day. I love it. So,
Yeah. Great.
all right.
Thank you so much.
Wow, there were so many incredible examples there of how competency-based and project-based learning um, can be personalized to meet students' individual needs. And from the student she described who's interested in fashion, and there was a student who does ballet, and Laura demonstrated that we can personalize these educational experiences, and AI can be leveraged to help structure the activities to meet educational standards and learning objectives. So I hope you enjoyed that. It was great stuff. Really checked a lot of boxes for me in terms of practical application of this stuff. A great example. So I'm Eric Byron. Thanks for listening to the Education Innovators podcast. Thanks to all those education innovators out there. Keep doing what you're doing. You are making a difference. Please subscribe and share. Bye-bye.